Silent mist covers the Cordilleras, the mystic mountain ranges of the Philippines' middle north. In this stillness, indigenous communities thrive in relative seclusion, separated by mountain walls from the rest of the populace, successfully preserving their culture for more than a couple of millennia. They remain steadfast to their ancestors' ways. Rituals of spiritual and social importance are religiously observed, accompanied by idiosyncratic sounds of highland gongs and wooden instruments. The beat progresses in alternating staccato, abrupt chops of palm against brass, the resulting rhythm reflecting the image of jagged surfaces, peaks rising one after the other. And then, again, silence. Another sound rises slowly, this time capturing the ethereal nature of the Cordillera mist. Fluidly, as clouds caress stretches of virgin forests, the words of storytellers spring forth. The head chanter is leading the women in singing the hudhud. The hudhud is a large collection of extended chanting pieces, epic narrations of the lives of the local heroes who are, like them, governed by the dawning and setting of the harvest sun. It has captured the ears of the international community. The UNESCO has declared it a masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity, one of the very few in the world. Harvest, planting, love, friendship. The hudhud is an episodic telling, recounting the best traits of the Ifugao, the most documented indigenous group of the Philippines. The hudhud is sung to break the monotony during funeral wakes and during key celebrations in the farming cycle. By tradition, it is sung by women, and they are held in high esteem as historians and preachers. A complete retelling would span 3 to 4 days, especially because there is a constant repetition of lines, names, and places detailing every step of the hero's adventure for the day. The songs have spanned thousands of years, as old as the rows of stone walls that surround these chanters. These walls are fortifications of the diplomatic kind, that which has given life to generations of Highlanders otherwise unable to utilize the unforgiving terrain of the land for the cultivation of their precious staple, rice. It is widely believed that the culture of terracing came to the Philippines through the migration of peoples from southern China and Indochina. These groups went as far down as Java and the lesser Sunda Islands. Hence, terracing is found throughout Southeast Asia as a highly effective means of farming around slopes. Yet, in this region, no one comes close to the prominence deserved by the Ifugao, builders of the most extensive and best-built network of rice terraces in the planet. Magnitude is the oft-repeated term in written accounts about the Ifugao rice terraces. Like the way the UNESCO bestowed a claim on their hudhud epics, international groups have named this Ifugao achievement a marvel of ancient civil engineering. Irrigation, the main requirement of rice cultivation, is where the genius of the forefathers comes into play. The terraces, which they have carved out of terra firma, using only the most primitive of tools, catch water streaming down from a generous source at the peaks. This is then channeled through canals, uniformly irrigating each terrace from the topmost to the last at the valley below. The terraces bear witness to an ancient wisdom, best illustrated by how Ifugao smashed huge rocks way before the age of machines and juggernauts. They placed a colossal boulder in a manageable stance and subject it to intense heat, fire above and fire beneath. The rock smolders, and in an exact moment they pour cold water above it, that which comes from the chilly springs around the mountainsides. With a sudden change of temperature, the boulder crumbles. Then they transport the rocks through river courses, and then, slowly, patiently, they carry all these up the steep inclines, terrace by terrace, slope by slope. Their efforts extended over thousands of years, bringing us a world wonder that we see today. Ifugao, once just an encompassing term for the different tribes that built these terraces, is now a proud province in northern Philippines with a history shaped by its immediate geography. The name comes from Ipugo, with the prefix E denoting people and Pugo meaning hill. Ifugao, an Americanized deviation, primarily meant people of the hills. The Americans established a solid presence in the territory in the rising years of their penetration of the Cordilleras, a feat which the Spanish conquistadors failed to achieve in the face of fierce resistance from the region's warrior tribes. The Americans built schools to educate their so-called uncivilized brown brothers, and in no time, the natives became what present-day intellectuals would call the Americanized Cordilleran. Funny how these turn-of-the-century Yankees once dubbed the now world-renowned masters of upland terracing uncivilized. Still, as history would unfold, the modern Ifugao became more fluent in English than in Filipino, the country's national language.
Your restart already?
This westernization of the Cordillerans, and the Ifugao in particular, continues to this day. The proud G-string wearing image of these people has been replaced by the leather jacket-clad, denim-garbed global native. Many are lured to the metropolitan life in the lowlands, abandoning their mountain communities and thus abandoning their indigenous lifestyle as well. Occurring parallel to this erosion of the Ifugao cultural backbone is the physical, albeit symbolic, erosion of the Rice Terraces. As a growing number of Ifugao leave for the bigger cities, maintenance work for the terraces fell on fewer shoulders. The Ifugao Rice Terraces is the work of generations of hands, one of the rare megastructures of the old world that never espoused forced labor and still remains a living and breathing source of sustenance for the Ifugao up to this very day. But with this dwindling number of able hands dedicated to its preservation, the great terraces are facing the biggest problem of their entire existence. It is a race against the wear and tear of time and circumstance. Efforts have stepped up to revitalize and preserve the terraces, and more importantly, the rich culture of this people. At the heart of the matter is the exo-migration of the Ifugao, lured by the promise of a better life in the lowlands. These common folk concede to the fact that the terraces give them food, but the harvest is not enough to provide for their formal education and a perceived higher standard of living. The local government began to address the issue. They're bent. Keep them in. Refurbish the economy. They are finding ways to augment the flow of income for the average Ifugao and are exploring other products potentially marketable outside the province. Aside from the famed Ifugao rice, they have branched out to tap other foodstuffs likewise found in the terraces. From the common taro planted abundantly in terraces, locals have developed a kind of chocolate-coated s'mores now being sold alongside the known Arabica Robusta coffee blend grown and ground in the province. And then there is yuyu or dojo, the small eel-like Japanese fish bred in the knee-deep waters of the terraces, best served fried or cooked in brine and ginger. A favorite among East Asian visitors and a prospective crowd drawer for its very likable flavor, yuyu is slowly being revived in the market. The fish was brought to the area by the Japanese soldiers during the Ifugao stint in the Second World War. Present-day Ifugao is indelibly marked by the Japanese occupation. Among these mountains, a significant chapter played out in the closing days of the war, the final flight and surrender of the Tiger of Malaya, General Tomoyuki Yamashita. A peak in the town of Mayoyo is the site of the last skirmish between the Japanese forces and the joint troops of the USAF and Filipino soldiers, directly preceding the fall of General Yamashita. This old-school building in the town of Kiangan is a site of the informal submission of the general before he proceeded to Baguio City to formalize his surrender in the presence of General John Wainwright. Not too far from the school is the Kiangan War Memorial Shrine, built to commemorate the end of the Second World War and the beginning of peace worldwide. From the top of this edifice, a far-reaching view of Kiangan's fog-kissed summits and the capital town of Lagawe can be seen. History enveloped within the vastness of the Rice Terraces. This in itself makes the province of Ifugao a worthy destination for any journeyman. With a steady stream of outsiders showing immense appreciation for the landscapes and cultural uniqueness of the province of Ifugao, the natives have rekindled their pride for their own identity. As much as they have become open to foreign influence, they are streaming back to their roots. Of course, the marriage of past and present often yields an eye-catching offspring. In province-wide festivals, one novel attraction is regularly featured: the race of the wooden scooters. These are goodwill games and are more like an unusual showdown of the artistry and ingenuity of the Ifugao. Scooters driven by nothing else but gravity, smoothly the exhibition begins. By the end of the course, they would have rode through a kilometer's worth of downward slope. Chewing their betel leaf and areca nut restores their energy for the hardest part of the race. The epilogue trip back up where they took off. In Kiangan, another event of brawn and muscle takes its course. These games are not just games, but a way of settling disputes, and remarkably, are still honored as such in some parts of Ifugao up to this day. The dart game, wherein the opponent stands 6 to 7 meters apart, is held to decide guilt for theft. If the accuser fails to hit the suspect, the latter is innocent. To settle issues of land ownership, wrestling matches are called. The victor's land claim is assumed to be correct. These men wear G-strings woven by skilled traditional artists of Ifugao. A closer look would reveal that their strips have no patterns. They are only plain stripes of red and very deep blue. In contrast, the G-string strip woven by this Ifugao woman is richly decorated with symbols. Human forms, stars, spearheads, fern stalks, lizards, serpents, mortars. The division of classes in Ifugao is manifested not through slavery, not through the blatant subordination of the lower class, but through the designs of their clothing. Only the wealthy class of Ifugao is licensed to wear these kinds of weave. Philip Lakbawan, an indigenous knowledge expert from the town of Hongduan, is in the company of two members of the wealthy class. He expounds on their complete ensemble of clothing and accessories.
So this one here is made out of xiang, imported long time ago from Indonesia. And this was used before as a medium of exchange. It's like money. And usually, a complete one is 42 pieces, including the big one. This is what we call the giduttu or the nobility belt. This is tied to the scabbard, and this is the double-bladed weapon. We call it the hinalong. These are only used during the time when there is what we call the bumaya or a festival. But ordinarily, when they go to the forest to cut trees for firewood or for making houses, they do not use this one. They remove it and they use an ordinary string. This one here is the nobility blanket, which we call it the bayaong. This is what we call the kango or the horn beer. This one here is like the crown of England. This is our crown. So if you have attained the stature of being the rich man, then you wear this one.
The wealthy class of Ifugao is called the Kadangyan, and to this day they remain the romantic symbol of generosity and authority, respected throughout the ages.
As far as our income level is concerned, that means you can afford to conduct fiesta, which we call bumaya.
The bumaya is a feast that marks the important events in the life of an Ifugao. Marriage, a good harvest, even the graduation of a son or daughter from a university. It involves the slaughter of carabaos and pigs that would be enough to feed hundreds of well-wishers.
That's why we do not make mansions in Ifugao, because it's better to eat than to make mansions.
Ifugao men wear the traditional garb during a bumaya and in other special occasions, but they rarely use it at home, on the streets, or at work. In comparison, the women continue to wear the ampuyo or skirt every day. The color of the cloth tells about the wearer's domicile. In the districts of Kiangan and Asipulo, weavers put in more strips of deep blue and black to contrast the red. The Mayoyaw Ifugao, meanwhile, were fascinated with rainbows and has since created skirts and G-strings with predominantly blue and rainbow hues. The people of Hongduan and Banawe, said to be the oldest stock of the Terracing people in Ifugao, wear pieces of red and black stripes of equal width. Red is an important color for the Ifugao. On a clear day, an observant visitor would not fail to see red shrubs dotting the rice terraces. This is the dungla, a ritual plant known in ordinary circles as the fortune plant, believed to prevent lightning from striking the fields and to ward off evil spirits. The Ifugao believe that spirits fear red, hence to create a blanket of protection against misfortune. Red, by tradition, dominates the weaver's looms. In other cultures, it is unthinkable for males to man the weaving loom. But in Ifugao, gender is not an issue. This is Ruben, an Ifugao from the town of Asipulo. Down the line, he belongs to the fourth generation of weavers that have used this loom, which he says he inherited from his grandmother. Then again, gender roles are indeed interchangeable in Ifugao. Men and women in Ifugao enjoy equal footing because, historically, they were never influenced by the patriarchal culture of the Spanish. Both sexes share the sun's heat and the heavy workload. The terraces are repaired, plowed, and watered by men. Women do the back-breaking task of planting seedlings for a very important reason. The Ifugao believe that the feminine touch ensures the fertility of the soil and a bountiful harvest. But these alone do not guarantee a good harvest. Threats from rodents, thieves, and wicked demigods are constant, and so the people are required to hold a special ritual to purge these evils. The ritual begins with the sharing of the consecrated baya, or rice wine. Here we see the wine jar called buhi, bartered from Chinese merchants in the earliest days of foreign contact on the Philippine shores. They call their native priest the mumbaki, meaning the performer of rituals and prayers. The mumbaki's invocation of the gods begin all for the blessing of the terraces and homes of the people of Hongduan. A chicken is sacrificed. Its heart is still beating, but it is the color of the bile that they are watching out for. A pale one does not augur well, but today, the bile is dark, foretelling success for the next phase, the exorcism of evil. Their noises drown the evil spirits in agony. After the ritual, they remove their dungla-laden accessories and thrust their spears into the soil. They leave the dungla at the edge of their territory. This shall serve as a searing blockade where unwanted spirits dare not pass through. This whole exercise is known by different names. In Hongduan, it is called the hulin. In Asipulo, it is the patipat. In other places, it is the tagtag, a vocal limitation of the ruckus made by the wooden planks and sticks. Ifugao is immersing their children in these kinds of traditions before these are forgotten. A cultural revival is in order. Yet, they believe that this is only achievable not through strict curricula imposed in formal schools, but through the graceful and free interaction between old and young. This is the school of living traditions. This young man learned the art of wood carving from his elders in the school of living traditions. He is chipping away fragments of this share of wood, revealing a pair of dining utensils with interesting anthropomorphic handles. The older men are carving larger pieces. Their feet hug the still unshaped wood as they work, holding the block firmly in place. One carves the bulol, guardian of the rice granaries, an esteemed spirit among the Ifugao. The other is rendering his version of a winged angel, an obvious manifestation of the advent of Christianity among Highlanders. Yet again, percussive sounds fill the air as the pieces of hardwood slowly take shape. It is a sound of ages of tradition. Who else but the greatest carvers of the mountainsides are capable of producing these creations as well? Scaled down perhaps, nevertheless, still objects of odd gazes, mysterious, raw, and magnetic. The Ifugao never run out of forests to source their wood from. Their woodlands are maintained by a ritual deeply ingrained into the Ifugao psyche. Their muyong, or woodlots, are continually replenished by acknowledged owners. For thousands of years, more than sustaining ecological balance, the muyong practice has constantly provided the Ifugao with wood for their tools, crafts, and yes, their houses. A traditional Ifugao hut is an enclosed one-room structure. It has a sleeping quarter, a living room, a dining room, and a rice granary. The hut is built on 4 wooden posts, usually with a tree root intact. These posts are installed with discs, rat guards, to keep the destructive rodents from climbing and destroying the stored rice. Traditionally, no nails are ever used in any part of the house. In a downsized demonstration of Ifugao Hut building, these men from Mayoyao shows every eager learner how they do it.
The preparation of the house is not easy. It takes about 8 months to a year to prepare the different parts and also the lot where it's going to be set up. During the olden times, we don't have vehicles to carry the wood. They have to carry it manually. And so after they prepare all the woods, they go back home, butcher again, especially pig, to prepare for their provision to go and get the wood from the forest. Now they have to employ the changa system. They ask people from the community, the men, to help go and get the wood from the forest, together with the other men who went along with them to prepare their wooden materials for their native house. And from there, they bring home, they eat, they drink rice wine, they chant, and mostly the chanting is about the adventure when they went to the forest to prepare the wood.
Just as he infuses art even into the most minute of household tools, the Ifugao infuses art into his one-of-a-kind abode. Art that is not at all an empty embellishment. The Ifugao carves lizards and serpents into the beams below the door, believed to provide protection against evil spirits. Nowadays, nipa roofs are slowly being replaced by galvanized iron sheets. Still, the manner of construction remains the same. Otley Bayer, a famous anthropologist who studied Philippine cultural groups, was effusive about these huts, proclaiming it second only to the Eskimo igloo in uniqueness, and finally calling it the very first prefabricated house in the world. Time and again, the Ifugao and their legacy are recognized in the international stage, an unshakable statement on the eminence of their way of life and worldview. Any signs of disintegration would be nothing short of a tragedy.
We acknowledge the fact that the knowledge of our new generations or our young ones are diminishing with regards to our customs and traditions and practices. One experience that I've experienced is when we went to the province to participate in the Gotad. It's a festival, provincial festival. The children chant very nicely. The chant, we call it hud-hud. But when we asked them, did you understand what you had been chanting? And they just shrug off.
Again, the importance of knowledge transfer from the elders to the young ones becomes evident. Since the earliest 1900s, their children's education were heavily influenced by Imperial America and the clasp of Christianization. Today, in the face of passionate cultural revival, their lessons are mandated by the voice of their forebearers. These young boys from Asipulo are learning the nuances of the Patipat ritual. Their cacophony, though tentative, resound through streets now lined with modern houses. The two groups of boys meet by the road bend. Coached by a knowledgeable elder, one lad delivers the salutation. Dressed in traditional ritual garb and ornamentations, the boys dance along the edges of Asipulo's terraces, retracing the course of Patipat performers as they have seen several times before. United by the victorious din of wood and sticks and planks, two generations bridge the lifeline of Ifugao culture. The past, finding its own echo in the rhythmic beat born on the hands that hold the future as well. All told, The province of Ifugao is never a sound of one dimension. To the wanderer, it is a percussive strike of ragged summits. To the spiritual traveler, it is a meditative chant about a life of harvest and mystic ritual. To the keeper of wisdom, it is a song of history.